For many years, there's been a lot of talk in the fitness space about what the best rep range is. And there's always been posts I've seen online on many platforms like Facebook and Instagram that always have this weird diagram, and it always splits it into often three categories. The first one being 1 to 5 reps is the best for strength, 6 to 12 is often the best for muscle building, and then anything above 12 reps to 20 or even more is always often the best for endurance and kind of cardio. And this has been a debate for years, if not even decades. And for a long time, this has always been debated amongst many lifters. And I think it's quite an interesting topic, really, because I think for the most part, they all do serve a purpose if you are a lifter. And I think you should take into consideration trying them all out and figuring out which one works best for you. I want to talk a little bit about my own story when it comes to lifting. I've been a lifter for over 5 years now, and I have built up a lot of experience. I've experimented with all the rep range, sets, reps, all of it. I've done wild and crazy experiments. I've tried everything there possibly is to do with playing around with the number of reps and the number of sets. And the truth is, there isn't really a definitive answer. I can only tell you my honest preference, and I'll start with what I initially did when I was a beginner and what I did was I would obsess over doing as much as I could in the gym. As a newbie to the gym, I would spend hours upon hours lifting and doing so many exercises. I mean, I can even show you the absurdity as to how much I was doing so much volume and spending at least 2 hours on average every single gym session as a 16-year-old obsessed with building some muscles and wanting to get a six pack and some huge biceps. And that was a fun time, and I definitely made some newbie gains, but obviously training in that kind of manner for that amount of time is obviously not optimal if you're an aspiring lifter or someone who wants to make real progress when it comes to lifting efficiently. Now, it's been a few years since then, and I've learned a lot. And one of the things I played around with was the amount of sets I was doing. And I also played around with the kind of reps as well. And this often varied depending on what exercise I was doing. But what I found was that if you start to dial it down and get more focused and reduce the amount of exercise you're doing within a workout, I used to do close to about 10 exercises per workout. And these workouts would span a range of at least 2 hours or even upwards of 2.5 hours for just one singular workout session. I remember this one time back in 2021, and I spent about 2.5 hours hitting chest, which is absolutely absurd when you think about it. I doubt much progress was even made in that session because of the fact that I would have been so fatigued or been able to complete the workout and not even push myself remotely close to failure and not made much progress. When you dial it back and you get more focused and start training more intensely with less volume, that's when you actually make real progress. And when it comes to rep ranges, I always found that middle point of around 6 reps to 12 reps was always a sweet spot for me. And I found that kind of rep range was quite versatile and gave me enough room to make progress onto heavier weights, but also apply it to pretty much every exercise I do in the gym, from squats to bench press to tricep pushdowns, all of those kind of exercises. I always applied that kind of same 6 to 12 rep range, and I've always seen the most progress with that. When I've gone below that, I've always found that when you go in that 1 to 5 rep range, you can still definitely make a bit of progress, but I feel like that's more geared to powerlifters and strongmen. For example, Eddie Hall, for example, I imagine he might train in that region. And I think if you're really serious about muscle building, 1 to 5 could do you some progress, but it'll probably do you more harm than good. And I've actually tried this myself, and I just ended up not liking it at all. When you train with super heavy weights, probably weights you're not as capable of lifting, you just run the risk of getting an injury and putting yourself in real danger for very little reward because of how intense and how taxing it is on your energy to lift such heavy weights with such low reps. There's not much to gain and perhaps a lot to lose if you do end up getting injured. Whereas if you go for a slightly lower weight, but you're able to do it for more controlled reps, let's say in the region of 6 to 12, you'll be much better off when it comes to muscle building and making progress, because 12 reps is such an achievable target. If you can do that controlled, And you can get to the top end of that rep range going from 10 to about 12 reps. You're more than capable of doing the next way up. If, for example, if you're doing incline bench press, for example, with dumbbells, and you're doing 20 kg dumbbells, and you could do that for 12 reps, you'd be more than capable of doing 22 kg without a doubt. And just quickly on the other rep range, which is like 12 reps to 20, which is often called like the endurance or the toning kind of rep range. It can definitely serve some purpose when it comes to specific exercises. There definitely is a place for it in the gym, but it'd have to be very specific movements, in my honest opinion. I think when it comes to that kind of rep ranges, some exercises I can think of where it would serve some kind of purpose are like lateral raises, where it's quite difficult to go really heavy on it. For example, if you did it on a cable machine, and you get to about 12 reps and you're unable to increase it to the next load, I can see a purpose for increasing it, or increasing the amount of reps you do instead of increasing the weight. And the same thing goes for like if you're training your core, for example. And I've actually tried and tested this myself, and I found that increasing the reps on a couple exercises, such as leg raises when you're training abs, I think doing that in a higher rep range can really help target your core. And it's quite difficult to progressively overload with weight, so I always end up doing body weight and just increasing the reps. And also when I'm training my neck as well, I always find that when training neck, the easiest manner to make good progress is to increase the reps first and use your body weight as much as you can before trying to add weight. So I do think that kind of 12 to 20 rep range, or even more than 20, does serve a purpose, but it's got to be for very specific kind of exercises you are doing. And I think it's more tailored to those kind of isolation exercises, the smaller muscles that you often can't lift as heavy as you can for more compound movements like your chest and your back and even your legs. All of them do serve a purpose, but all around, for about 90% of your movements, the 6 to 12 rep range is going to do you the best job when it comes to building muscle. And for the odd exercises, such as your lateral delt raises or even training your core, for example, I do think that 12 to 20 rep range does serve a purpose, and I think you can definitely make progress using that high rep range. When it comes to the 1 to 5 rep range, it does serve a purpose, but in my honest opinion, I wouldn't recommend beginner lifters to try to do that. More often than not, I would just deem it more as ego lifting, even if you can get a couple reps in. And you probably will get more strength from doing that. The overall enjoyment and satisfaction you'll get from trying to bust out a couple of reps with a really heavy weight you're probably not capable of lifting comfortably and in control, then it's probably not worth your time. You're much better off being in the control of the weight you can comfortably do. And once you get to a comfortable amount of reps, 10 to 12, let's say, you're more than capable of increasing that and applying progressive overload. And increasing the weight once you're comfortable within a certain rep range and you're getting to the top of that rep range. And then and only then should you consider progressing and increasing the weight from then on. So just to summarize, all of them do serve a purpose when it comes to rep ranges. 1 to 5, 6 to 12, or even 12 to 20 and above all serve a purpose. But in my personal opinion, I think 6 to 12 reps is the sweet spot when it comes to muscle building. And they can cover effectively every exercise you can think of in the gym. And throughout all my workouts in my 5 years of lifting, I've always applied that same principle. And pretty much all my working sets when it comes to every exercise I've ever done in the gym has always been within that 6 to 12 rep range. I have obviously tried others and found that they're not as good as that 6 to 12 range, but obviously use your intuition and find out what works best for you. I have found that through 5 years of lifting and experience, training intensely and close to failure, if not to failure on occasion, and pushing very hard in that rep range of 6 to 12 I've always seen give me the best results. And I think I'll continue to do that in my lifting journey as I continue and grow to get stronger. And I think you should do the same as well. If you like this video, follow for more.